Hello, my name is Carl Sahlberg and I'm the owner of Creative Reproductions to Scale. This is one of a number of videos that I'm going to be making to help you become acquainted with the many electrical components and features that we have to offer, as well as to explain how easy it actually is to wire your own dollhouse. Bring your dollhouse to life. Light it. Obviously, the first thing that you need to do when you're getting prepared to wire your dollhouse is to select the power supply. Once the power supply has been selected, you need the connection from the power supply, which would be this plug, how you're going to connect it to the dollhouse. And you need to have some type of a power connector. We actually offer 4 different power connectors. The first one is the Mini, which is very popular because it's so simple and it's so small, and yet it is a very rugged connection. The male plug from the power supply goes into the jack of the power connector, and then we have inlets on the back side for the wires that you're going to be wiring the dollhouse. In other words, this cord, once the power supply is plugged in, is producing 12 volts. That's going to be going to the dollhouse for all of your lights to run off of. If you notice, the power connector has a red and a black little push button that's on the top here, making it extremely easy to connect the wires for going into the dollhouse. First thing that you need to do is to select where you're going to put the power connector. I normally will put it on the bottom edge of the dollhouse, and you simply need to glue it in place. I like to have a board that I always work off of. Is just a small piece of wood, but one side I apply sandpaper to. I can take the bottom of this and just do a quick sanding to rough it up. The glue will make it stick a lot better to it. We're going to assume that this is the side of the dollhouse that we're working with, and I'm going to mount this at the bottom of the dollhouse, and I'll just put a little bit of glue. I'm using Quick Grip, which I find worked quite well, and we'll put a little bit on the bottom of that. And I'll try and mention a number of things that I do in working on it. Let's set this on edge as if this was the bottom of the dollhouse. You're going to want to have the plug or the jack end facing to where the cord is going to go in. And I would position it far enough back so that when you do have the plug in here, it is back far enough from the stem or the actual male plug that's on here. If you stick it out this way, you can hit this and break the connection off of the base. But being in here, you have the flexibility of the cord itself. So I'm going to come in just a little bit on here, and I will apply it to the board. Now with Quick Grip, I find that the quickest way for it to really adhere is to stick it in place, pull it away from itself, let it air for about 10 seconds, and then put it back into place, and it grips quite well. And I'm just going to line it up that I know that I have it where I want it. And that's going to be on there pretty tight. It actually cures overnight, and you probably cannot easily knock that off when it is fully cured. But in about 20 minutes, it is tight enough for you to be able to work on it and so forth. If this is going to be a round wire wiring of the dollhouse, it's very simple. All you need to do is take your wires, and if you notice, we have a red and a black because I wire everything with a DC power supply. DC has polarity. One side is positive and one side is negative. Red is always positive, black is negative. So everything is color coded in what I sell. So we're going to have 2 wires that we're running into the dollhouse. And I'm just going to take a short piece here to show you what we're doing. In another video, we'll show you how to easily strip these wires, but this is one way, is with the strippers that are on here. This is a 28 gauge stripper, or wire that we're stripping. I strip the ends off so we have the bare wires, and then I'll fold back on itself to give me more surface area for it to hold when we're going into the plug. And you can take the red wire first, as I grabbed it, put it in until it hits, well actually it should show you, I'm going into these holes. The plunger is going to open the gate that's inside that hole. So I'm going to put this in until it hits that gate, then push down on the plunger, and you can get that wire to go just a little bit further in, and it's locked. Take the black wire, and we'll do the same thing, put it in until it hits the gate, push down, and then it'll go about another 1/4 of an inch in, and then you've got it locked really tight. Where I'm going to go with that is, if this was mounted on the side of your dollhouse, I would just drill a hole, and I'll grab a Dremel, and I like to use a small hole, and I'll just drill the hole right at the end here. Wouldn't you know it? I used it yesterday and the battery's dead. And then I can put the 2 wires through that hole. And this is assuming that we have mounted this on the skirt on the bottom of the dollhouse, and I'm going into what I call the basement, and we'll wire to the rest of the system. Now if you're using tape wire, we can also use this with tape wire, and what we will do is similar, but let me take a piece of tape, and if you notice, my flat tape is red and black in color, staying with the color coding that we have on everything else. Let me just assume that that's the flat tape that you've wired around the dollhouse. If this would be going into the skirt or the basement underneath the dollhouse, I would still run my wires to the inside, and I would probably have my tape on the other side of this board. But to show you how easy this is I do solder, and I will put a little bead of solder by making a circle with the hot iron, putting a bead of solder, so I have just a little bubble of solder that's on there. Now I could make these a lot smaller, because we don't need to go very far. And because I have the ability to be able to do this, I normally would have taken this out of the connectors and stripped my wires first. But we'll come back here and sure it will. There we go. And again, I fold it back on itself. Again, to give us more surface area for soldering. I'll use my pliers to hold it down in place, and obviously red goes to red. So I'm going to bring this red wire down to that bubble that we had here, and just put the heat on top of the wire until it melts the solder. And I can just get it to flow right on top of there. And then you have a good solid connection that's not going to break loose.